Hello, my friends. Welcome to June. I've got comedian and cultural commentator J.L. Cauvin joining me. It's a great conversation. We talk. You can watch it on youtube.com/standupwithpete yesterday for over an hour. If you want to jump to it, it begins at about 32 minutes in. But I've got your headlines and clips, and I want to welcome you to June. Happy June, everybody. It's Pride Month. Yeah, Pride Month. Hey, how come the LGBT community gets a whole month, but veterans, they only get a day? That's one of the tweets I saw yesterday, which I found entertaining and ridiculous. Pride Month is kicking off with events around the world starting this past weekend, an annual series of parades and other gatherings to celebrate LGBTQ plus culture and rights. This is when they really ram it down our throats, if you know what I mean. It's also a great time to experiment sexually. It's what I always say. Welcome to Stand Up. I hope you had a good weekend. I took a couple days off at the end of last week, and I am back. I'll be hosting a Hangout tonight at 8 p.m. I hope to see you at 8 p.m. East if you're a paid subscriber. If you're not a paid subscriber, well, sign up now. Patreon.com/PeteDominic. Join our community of curious, caring, thoughtful, kind, compassionate, hilarious, brilliant people who are looking for answers to our problems as I try to bring on the smartest people I can find with credibility and reputations and moral clarity to explain it all to us each and every day here. Everything, hopefully, helping you learn about how to better your country, your community, your planet, and yourself. That's the charter. That's the story. That's the effort I am making with you each and every day, and I cannot do it without your support. So thanks very much for joining me today. I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout. All right, that's it. Let's get to those headlines. We got to start with Ukrainian attack deep into Russia from the east to the west. It reads like something out of a Mission Impossible movie. It's crazy what happened there and just how successful the Ukrainian attack was. And I don't know how quite to articulate how big of a deal it was, but it will be one of the most significant days, actions, and attacks from either side during the entire war. One reporter, Ukrainian reporter who covers things from Ukraine, her name is Maria Avdiva, writes, "This will be in the textbooks. Ukraine secretly delivered FPV drones and wooden mobile cabins into Russia. The drones were hidden under the roofs of the cabins, which were later mounted on trucks. At the signal, the roofs opened remotely. Dozens of drones launched directly from the trucks, striking strategic bomber aircraft. And Russia can't produce these bombers anymore. The loss is massive. Nothing like this has ever been done before." You got to see the pictures and the videos and the reporting on this. It's all accurate. They attacked across the country with a huge deal of success. And I highly recommend that you read about this attack and the success that it was for Ukraine. And this is just the day before Ukraine and Russian leaders are supposed to meet to negotiate some type of ceasefire or peace agreement. And one report I read was that the entire operation cost like $50,000. But even if that's a low estimate, it is absolutely seems to be worth it to destroy Russian bombers capable of delivering nuclear warheads. To me, that seems really like a great expenditure and that we should be supporting that. And I have never been one to support any kind of armed conflict in my life, but I do support this specific one as well as how it seems to be being carried out. So I thought that was a fascinating story and a top story and one I wanted to lead with because it's a big effing deal. Of course, the other war zone in the world that gets as much attention or a lot of attention is what's happening in Gaza. The Red Cross says at least 21 were killed and dozens shot in a Gaza aid incident yesterday. A mass casualty influx of people, many with gunshot or shrapnel wounds, received at a Red Cross hospital in southern Gaza. The organization said following disputed reports about an incident near an aid distribution center in Rafah. The International Committee of the Red Cross said 21 people were declared dead upon arrival, while women and children were among 179 cases. The organization's statement came after the Hamas-run civil defense agency in Gaza said at least 31 people were killed, many more wounded in the incident. They blamed it on Israeli gunfire targeting civilians, but the Israeli Defense Forces said findings from an initial inquiry showed its forces had not fired at people while they were within the aid center. As of Sunday evening, the situation on the ground remained unclear. Let's head to Boulder, Colorado, where there was an apparent, quote, terrorist attack, although I think it's way too early to say such things, and that is the opinion of the local sheriff in Boulder, Colorado, but they jumped right to it in the federal government. FBI Director Kaush Patel said officials were investigating the incident as a targeted terror attack. Did you see that picture of Kaush Patel doing the interview with Brett Baer on Fox News, and they were in those high chairs, and he looked like a little baby sitting his feet were dangling. They weren't touching. He didn't look very tough. A suspect carried out a heinous attack on a pedestrian mall in Boulder, Colorado, apparently leaving multiple people hurt, including some who have appeared to life-threatening injuries. Details not immediately clear. Police said the attack occurred where a pro-Israel demonstration was being conducted, that the injuries were consistent with people being burned. The suspect was taken into custody. There were reports of Molotov cocktails being used. Hard to know exactly the details of this one, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I think I'm generally going to depend on the local authorities more in such situations. I will say this was an anti-Semitic attack for sure. France's Holocaust Museum and 3 Paris synagogues and a restaurant were vandalized with paint overnight Saturday. It was in what the Israeli embassy denounced as a coordinated anti-Semitic attack. An investigation has been opened into damage committed on grounds of religion. French Interior Minister said he was deeply disgusted by the heinous attacks targeting the Jewish community. And I will report any of those that I see, and if you send them to me, please make sure you do. standuppapete@gmail.com. All right, now let's go to, speaking of this week in racism, New Orleans is holding burial of repatriated African Americans whose skulls were used in racist research. I probably should have given you a trigger alert on that, but New Orleans celebrated the return and burial of the remains of 19 African American people whose skulls had been sent to Germany for racist research practices in the 19th century. On Saturday, a multi-faith memorial service, including a jazz funeral, one of the city's most distinct traditions, paid tribute to the humanity of those coming home to their final resting place at the Hurricane Katrina Memorial. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. How about this? The United Kingdom is going to ban the sale of disposable vapes in response to the soaring waste and safety risks. The sale of disposable vapes will be banned in the UK starting yesterday as the country becomes the latest to tackle the environmental nightmare of single-use devices. However, some campaigners warned that the new restrictions are just a drop in the ocean in the war against plastic waste. I'm always going to talk about plastic waste and remind you to try your best not to use single-use plastic bags or bottles whenever possible. All right, how about this one? Removing fluoride from public drinking water may lead to millions more cavities in U.S. children, according to a new study, and I could have probably told you that without the study. And another major controversy and series of controversies around immigration, detainments, and authoritarian, totalitarian tactics. This one outside a congressman's office in New York. Heather Cox Richardson wrote about it in her daily newsletter. She said, on Wednesday, officers from Federal Protective Service, which is part of DHS, handcuffed an aide in the Manhattan office of Representative Jerry Nadler, Democrat of New York. Someone sitting in the office captured the confrontation on video. Federal agents are trying to meet the quotas the administration has set for arrests by detaining individuals outside immigration courtrooms after they show up for their scheduled hearings. And according to Christopher Mogg of the New York Times, the peaceful protesters gathered on Wednesday outside the Manhattan Federal Building that holds an immigration court, and immigration advocates gathered outside the courtroom. As officers detained immigrants outside the courtroom, advocates reminded the immigrants they had a right to remain silent. Officers threatened to arrest the advocates for loitering, and a member of Nadler's staff invited some of the advocates to Nadler's office, the floor above the court, to defuse the situation. Well, the video shows a federal agent demanding access to a private area of Nadler's office, saying, "You're harboring rioters in the office." When an aide tried to stop them, agents handcuffed the aide. When another aide asked for a search warrant, an agent said they didn't need one and pushed past her. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said that its officers entered Nadler's office because they were concerned about the safety of his staff members, and that the agents detained the aide so they could complete their safety check. Nadler, who is the highest-ranking Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, identified the invasion of his office as an attempt to intimidate a member of Congress. Quote, "The Trump administration is really using totalitarian or even authoritarian practices," he said. "We have to fight them. We don't want to be a fascist country." Later Friday afternoon, agents from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid raided a popular San Diego restaurant, Buona Forchetta, just before it was supposed to open in what immigration advocate Aaron Reichlin Melnick identified as an attempt to get local governments to work with them. J.W. August of the Times of San Diego reported that according to the restaurant's manager, 20 to 25 ICE officers surrounded the building and then came inside, pushed him against a wall and handcuffed him and the staff, many of whom are students. The agents looked at a computer and at employees and apparently not finding what they were searching for, arrested 2 employees because they, quote, didn't have a physical ID. When an angry crowd tried to stop them from taking the 2 workers, the officers threw 2 flashbang grenades to push the crowd back. After the Department of Homeland Security published a list of sheriffs claimed were non-compliant in working with Department of Homeland Security, the National Sheriff's Association issued a statement yesterday saying the publication of the list not only violated the core principles of trust, cooperation, and partnership with fellow law enforcement, but it also has the potential to strain the relationship between sheriffs and the White House administration and could create a vacuum of trust that may take years to overcome. The organization, many of whose members are Trump loyalists, tried to distance DHS from the president, saying DHS has done a terrible disservice to President Trump and the sheriffs of this country, and demanded DHS apologize to the sheriffs and the American people. Man, wow, that is a lot. I did not know about that, which is why reading it in detail I thought would be helpful for you to hear. I highly recommend subscribing to Heather Cox Richardson. I know she's wildly popular, but she's not nearly as popular as Sean Hannity. So spread the word, spread her word, because there is so much important context and nuance in her newsletter, and I highly recommend it, as well as many other sources, as you know, all the time. Super helpful in this fragmented era of media and lack of trust to be able to depend on each other and have kind of a warehouse of credibility and respectful journalists and sources that we can help reference and use and identify as we navigate this chaos and madness that we seemingly have been dealing with since the first Trump administration and pandemic, and now it has really returned, I think. Anybody else agree? Yeah? Is that one way of describing it that makes sense? It certainly does to me. We'll talk more about it at tonight's Hangout for sure. In other news, yes, I'm still going with the headlines. The mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma announced a $105 million trust to address the impact of the 1921 Tulsa massacre that targeted African-American homes and businesses. The announcement was made on the 104th anniversary of the massacre, which started on May 31st, 1921, ended the following day, leaving as many as 300 dead. The mayor of Tulsa, Monroe Nichols, said this is a critical step to help to unify Tulsans and heal the wounds that for so long prevented generations of our neighbors from being able to recover from the race massacre. I'm glad that was able to be accomplished in Oklahoma in 2025 with a Trump presidency. I have some questions about how they were able to pull that off without Trump and his minions somehow standing in the way of it. It's really important, and I want to read and learn more about it, so I wanted to mention that one to you. Yesterday, China announced that it was denouncing, I should have just said China yesterday denounced U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Oh, just like his mom, that everybody else, for calling the Asian country a threat, accusing him of touting a Cold War mentality as tensions between Washington and Beijing further escalate. Read about it at ABC News and everywhere else. Also wanted to just mention the NBA finals are set. It'll be the Oklahoma Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. And a big who cares, because it's Indiana and Oklahoma. No offense, but that's the 2025 NBA finals. And if you're not an NBA fan, you probably don't care. But if you are an American, you probably care that Loretta Swit passed away over the weekend. She died at age 87. She won 2 Emmy Awards for playing Major Margaret Houlihan on the pioneering hit TV series MASH. A lot of people remembering her over the weekend. And those are the headlines that I've gathered for you from this weekend. That's one way of catching up with all that's happening in the world, according to me, editorially here. And you can always contribute to the headlines segment. There's all kinds of different ways, obviously, to get to me, but I prefer standupwithpete@gmail.com for your headlines. Easier to collect, aggregate, organize them. And now the other way to do it is through audio clips. That's right. I've got your sound bites. It's time for the clip show. And we've got a lot because it's Monday. You had a whole bunch of the Sunday shows, and that's where some of the cabinet secretaries, one of the only places that they show up outside of friendly media outlets they know won't ask them any hard questions, but they did show up at the Sunday network shows, and they did get asked some pretty hard questions. Maybe not the ones you would have asked, maybe not the way you would have asked them, but it certainly was the case with Margaret Brennan, who always does a pretty good job at CBS on Face the Nation. Let's start with her conversation with the Secretary of the Treasury Secretary, some might call him, Scott Bessent or Bessant, others might call him. I don't know. This dude is real weird. Talks weird. He sounds weird. He doesn't seem real to me. He seems like if someone told me he was made of wax for reals, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Anyway, here we go.
Over the next 4 years, leave the country in great shape in 2028.
You know that the Speaker of the House estimates that this is going to add $4 to $5 trillion over the next 10 years, and there's that debt limit increase.
Well, again, Margaret, that's CBO scoring.
That's the Speaker of the House.
No.
He said it last Sunday on this program.
He said that's the CBO scoring.
He said that sounds right.
Let me tell you.
Oh, she got him. Let me tell you. All right, well, here's some more.
JP Morgan's Diamond also predicted a debt market crisis. Cracks in the bond market was what he said. You are considering easing some regulations, you've said, for the big banks. How do you avoid that bond market crisis he's predicting spreading and really causing concern, particularly with all of the worries about American debt right now?
So again, I've known Jamie a long time, and for his entire career, he's made predictions like this. Fortunately, none of them have come true. That's why he's a banker, a great banker. He tries to look around the corner. One of the reasons I'm sitting here talking to you today and not at home watching your show is that I was concerned about the level of debt. So the deficit this year is going to be lower than the deficit last year, and in 2 years, it will be lower again. We are going to bring the deficit down slowly. We didn't get here in 1 year. And this has been a long process. So the goal is to bring it down over the next 4 years, leave the country in great shape in 2028.
All right. Well, there you go. A pile of bullshit. And here's another smoking pile. And I want you to hear these things, not to spread their lies, but to be able to understand how they are lying so that you don't hear it from somebody else, so that it doesn't get parroted or perpetuated by others, and that you don't believe it, because it ain't true. We'll have the former New York Times healthcare expert Jonathan Cohn coming up. He's now at the Bulwark with a fact check. But first, a little bit more of the mountain of bullshit. This now from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, on NBC's Meet the Press with Kirsten Welker.
Was pretty right when you adjusted for inflation. But let me read you something that you said back in 2021 about the CBO. This was in relation to a Democratic bill. You said the CBO has confirmed this bill adds nearly $400 billion to the deficit, contrary to the White House's claim that the bill is paid for. So do you only believe the CBO when a Democrat is president, Mr. Speaker?
No, this is very easy to explain. The CBO sometimes gets projections correct, but they're always off every single time when they project economic growth. They always underestimate the growth that will be brought about by tax cuts and reduction in regulations.
Oh, man, that guy is bad. I think JL says, yeah, he says apologies to Mike Pence for thinking he's so bad when you hear this guy, Mike Johnson. Well, here's Senator Rand Paul. Also, I believe this is CBS Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan. He is more honest about debt and deficit and consistent on it, whether you agree or consistent on the issue.
The president has taken note of some of your skepticism, and he did tweet yesterday saying that if you, Rand Paul, vote against his massive border and tax bill, the people of Kentucky will never forgive you. Do you consider that a threat? And do you know if you have 3 other Republicans who will join you to block it from passage?
I had a very good conversation with the president this week about tariffs. He did most of the talking, and we don't agree exactly on the outcome. But when I come home to Kentucky, I talk to the Farm Bureau, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the bourbon industry, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the cargo companies, UPS, DHL, all of their pilots are opposed to it. I talk to the hardwood floor people. I talk to the people selling houses, building houses. Mm-hmm. I have no organized business interest in Kentucky for the tariffs. So I think it's worth the discussion. And it's worth people remembering that the Republicans used to be for lower taxes. Tariffs are a tax. So if you raise taxes on the private sector, that's not good for the private sector.
Yeah, that sounds pretty right to me. He's always been saying that, and I think that's true. Is that true? is what he's saying. Do you agree with that? Is that pretty conventional? Here's a little bit more from that interview.
Well, we hear from other senators who also get complaints from their people in their districts, but they're falling in line. Do you have 3 other Republicans who will stand with you to block this bill?
I think there are 4 of us at this point, and I would be very surprised if the bill at least is not modified in a good direction. Look, I want to vote for it. I'm for the tax cuts. I voted for the tax cuts before. I want the tax cuts to be permanent. But at the same time, I don't want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So I've told him if you take the debt ceiling off the bill, in all likelihood, I can vote for what the agreement is on the rest of the bill. And it doesn't have to be perfect to my liking, but I can't be. If I vote for the $5 trillion debt, who's left in Washington that cares about the debt? We will have lost. But the GOP will own the debt once they vote for this.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Pretty impactful statements from Rand Paul, who will vote for this. He and those other 4 senators he mentioned will all cave. You know that they will. It's just a matter of time and flexing from our mad king in charge of threatening people to vote for him, or else any number of consequences are going to happen to you. It'd be a shame if you woke up and weren't a senator anymore, huh, Rand? Yeah. All right. So let me then give you that fact check I was talking about. What you're about to hear is Russell Vought on CNN. He is the architect of Project 2025, which he said was not. He was not enacting, by the way, apparently on CNN. But here he is talking to Dana Bash. And then right after that, you're going to hear Sam Stein and Jonathan Cohn of The Bulwark. Jonathan Cohn, very respected economic analyst, particularly when it comes with healthcare. But this is the fact check that you need to hear after that mountain of bullshit. But first, a little bit more shit being spread by the gatekeeper of hell. Is that too hyperbolic? Russell Vought.
This bill will preserve and protect the programs, the social safety net, but it will make it much more common sense. Look, 1 out of every $5 or $6 in Medicaid is improper. We have illegal immigrants on the program. We have able-bodied working adults that don't have a work requirement that they would have in TANF or even SNAP. And those are something that's very important to institute. That's what this bill does. No one will lose coverage as a result of this bill.
I saw you on Twitter before I summoned you to YouTube. You seemed perplexed, angered, rageful. What is it about that's wrong?
Yeah. So, I mean, here we have the director of the Office of Management and Budget saying there are no coverage losses in this bill. I mean, that's not just misleading. That's not out of context. That is a bold-faced lie. And we're talking, left is right, up is down, zebras are chickens. I mean, this is just not, there's no universe where this is true. The CBO has estimated that from Medicaid alone, and remember, there's Medicaid cuts here, there's cuts to Obamacare here, that we are looking at more than 7 million people losing health insurance. And actually, just to be clear, Medicaid is actually bigger than that. It's just that some of them will find their way to other forms of insurance, which will be not as comprehensive. So you're looking at the number of uninsured Americans rising by more than 7 million people. I do not understand how an official of the United States government can get up there with a straight face and say there are no coverage. I mean, like them, he may want to justify them. Fine, own it, argue for it, but pretend they're not real.
And his justification or rationalization, which Mike Johnson also talks about, and we'll get to that in a little bit, is that, it's people who shouldn't be on Medicaid to begin with, so they don't count as coverage losses. Is that more or less what he's trying to get at?
I mean, that's one of the arguments they make. And in Mike Johnson, when he was on, I think, Meet the Press, that's where he started. And you've heard that a lot. Well, this is not who Medicaid is for. Well, so let's stop and talk about Medicaid for a second. Yeah. The program, right? It was established in 1965, same bill that created Medicare. It was for low-income people. Right. Over the years, we've had debates. Congress has had debates. You may recall there was a really big argument in 2009 and 2010 about something. You were there. I was there, over the Affordable Care Act. And the outcome of that debate was, hey, we want to get closer to a universal coverage system, and we're going to build on Medicaid. So Medicaid will cover more people. I mean, we had that debate. And again, if they don't like that, if they think, well, we don't want that, fine, then say that. But don't say this is not what Medicaid is for.
That's true.
Yeah, very good. Really helpful, I thought. Hopefully you appreciate it. Jonathan Cohn, I got to try to get him back here on the show if he's not exclusive to the Bulwark, because he explains things real well. Aaron Carroll was always a big fan of his. I think Jonathan Cohn was a bigger fan of Aaron's, where he got a lot of the data that you heard him there as a reference point. But let's get a little bit more from these guys yesterday on the Bulwark in response to Russell Vaught's comments. Here's more from one of the members of the Legion of Doom, Russell Vaught.
This bill doesn't increase the deficit or hurt the debt. In fact, it lowers it by $1.4 trillion. What some of the watchdogs have done is they have used CBO's artificial baseline, which doesn't allow and assume that current tax law will be extended because of sunsets that are in the law. They don't do that with spending. It is totally something that would be foreign to any common sense person who comes and looks at how we budget in this country. And so when you assume the extension of the president's tax relief from 2017, this budget or this bill, and it's really a reconciliation bill. It's not really a budget bill. It is using a budget process. This is a $1.4 trillion over 10 years deficit reduction. It's $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Obviously, we have a little bit of spending in there as well for border and defense. But that is the biggest mandatory savings package that we have seen since the 1997. It's very historic.
Again, what are we in here?
It'd be nice to just make up numbers and be like, yeah, it's this, it's that, and just like,
Maybe we're in a simulation and there's like another simulation where they've passed a bill that actually cuts spending and raises taxes enough to reduce the deficit. I don't know. It seems like an interesting universe. I'd like to go visit it. We do not live in that universe. That is not this simulation. In this version of reality, this bill explodes the deficit. And it does so because of these tax cuts that are heavily, heavily weighted to the wealthy. There's a chart running around, which if you haven't seen on social media, where the CBO basically said, okay, here's the money we're taking from the poor, and here's the money we're giving to the rich. It's basically 1-to-1. It is a literal truth to say that if you look at the amount of money that is now being taken out of Medicaid and food assistance, is right around the same size as the money that's going to go to tax cuts for the wealthiest people in America. So this is literally taking money and resources, the people who desperately need it, and we can talk about why and what's going for, to people who are who make the most money, who are at the highest end of the income scale.
There you go. A great fact check from Jonathan Cohn on the Bulwark. And now I've got to play you this Elon Musk audio from CBS Sunday Morning, where the reporter Jeff Pogue comes on, and you hear that familiar sound of the voiceover from whoever the reporter is talking about the segment or the conversation they're about to have. Here's Jeff Pogue talking. I just left this on there. I didn't have to, but I just love this. Here's the first one.
But the interview didn't get off to a smooth start.
I noticed that all of your businesses involve a lot of components, a lot of parts. Do the tariffs and the trade wars affect any of this?
Tariffs always affect things a little bit.
Wondering what your thought is on the ban on foreign students, the proposal. I mean, you were one of those kids, right?
Yeah, I think we want to stick to, the subject of the day, which is like spaceships, as opposed to, presidential policy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was told anything's good, but...
No.
It is just, I almost respect him for that. He's like, I don't know what they told you, but nothing. Let's just talk about these couple of issues and only these issues. I don't want to answer any questions about all the other things that you clearly have the right and interest of asking me. So no. Well, here's a little bit more for you from that interview.
I think what was starting to happen was that, it was a bit unfair because, Doge became the whooping boy for everything. So if there was some cut, real or imagined, everyone would blame Doge. I've had people think that, somehow Doge is going to stop them from getting their Social Security check, which is completely untrue.
Well, the king of spreading lies and rumors and complete horrible conspiracy theories is upset that people don't believe things. I wonder who's got the blame for that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is depends on where you're coming from. So, I'm like a proponent of smaller government, not bigger government. So now if somebody's a proponent of, more government programs and bigger government, and they see, hey, Doge is cutting all these government programs, then they'll be fundamentally opposed to that because they just think the government should do more things. That's just a fundamental, I guess, ideological opinion. But my frank opinion of the government is that, the government is just like the DMV that got big. Okay, so when you say let's have the government do something, you should think, do you want the DMV to do it?
And then,
yeah, that's what you should think. That's actually not terrible messaging from right-wing conservatives who hate government. It's always been something that's been effective. He just is so bad at talking. It took him 20 minutes to get that stupid anti-government talking point out, which, by the way, betrays the fact that there are millions of amazing people working in the federal government doing vitally important things for our health, our safety, and our future all the time, every day. Hundreds of millions of actions being taken in our interests that we completely take for granted. He just destroys in one befuddled, terrible talking point. But there you have it, Elon Musk on CBS Sunday Morning. And that is all I've got for you in the audio segment of today's show. I am sorry I don't have a nice fat comedy clip here for you, but I screwed up and I'm way over time. Want to get this up. Plus, I have an over-hour conversation with JL Cauvin. So take a deep breath and try to wash that all away if you can. The emotions that it creates, the chaos, the chatter that might be happening in your brain as a result of hearing it, and try to cleanse your palate for a conversation between JL Cauvin and I, who cover a lot of that. So I don't know why I'm telling you to do that. Maybe you'll just have to do that at the end of today's show. But JL and I have, I think, a great conversation. We talked a little bit about the potential for his congressional run, what's going on with his podcast briefly, but then we really get into it on a number of issues here, and I think you're going to love our conversation. It was live on YouTube on Sunday morning. We met. And so if you want to watch it, you can at youtube.com/standupwithpete. But go support JL on YouTube. Watch him live. He was just up in Ottawa, Canada, where he sold out again, I think, and had a great set. They love him up there in Canada. He's just back from that gig, and now we've got him. His podcast coming back soon, Rain on Your Parade. Let's do it right now with one of my faves. And it's June 1st, and we're very happy to have you here. You've got a lot of personal and professional news and accomplishments to talk about, and I want to get into it with all the world and what's happening, because I always love the way that you explain things. That's the name of this new idea. I like having people on the show that explain things well, and their perspective is valued, and their moral clarity is something that a lot of people can see and that you wear on your sleeve. You're that guy, and you are here, and you have an announcement to make about your personal health choices.
Oh yeah. Again, we are, my life is like I live like a wrestler lives, like a college wrestler. My weight fluctuates drastically throughout the years and months. And, so June 1st, I said, in the likely event that I make a run for Congress, a handsome face, height, intellectual heft, comedic charisma, those are great, but you still got to check all the boxes, and looking good on camera is added to the thing. So I want to lose 70 pounds by the end of the year, which I can really do with discipline. No Zempic is what I say. So starting today, you were calling it disgusting as I was munching on these healthy walnuts. But whenever hardcore fans of mine know, whenever I'm drinking green tea and eating walnuts, that I'm serious, because green tea with matcha tastes like ass, and walnuts taste like a tree's shit. So I'm about it right now. I'm going to get shredded. This double chin McConnell thing is going to go away. The abs are going to come back. Some arm veins, because you got to do campaign events, in the summer and spring with the short sleeve shirt.
There you go.
Casually point at someone as the veins in your bicep bulge. Sorry to break the fourth wall on, the shallow campaign I'm going to run.
No, I think it's
on gyrating hips and popping my pecs.
I think one of the things that you understand that politicians some of them don't understand well enough simply is optics, the way that you look, the way that you deliver things. We can all talk about our own biases when it comes to gender, when it comes to race, when it comes to age, when it comes to just somebody's affect. Bottom line is it matters. You're selling something. You're selling yourself as a politician, as a person that's going to do something, and it helps when you appeal to them in these ways that our society, unfortunately, especially in the era of television, desires and needs. You get that. Everybody should understand that. And I'm just happy that you're making healthy choices because you're my friend and I care about you, but I wasn't criticizing you for eating healthy. I didn't know what you were eating before.
I knew you weren't, Chris. You just found it disgusting that I was chewing into the microphone.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you said it now on the record live. And yeah, you were chewing into the mic. And I thought that was disgusting. I think that was monstrous.
You know what? I make no apologies for my health journey, Pete.
Again, it sounded like I'm not asking you. I'm just saying as a listener, if a listener heard it, they would have been like, does he have a gizzard?
Yeah. You know what? I did a good joke in Ottawa, or were you going to ask me specifically about Ottawa?
Jesus. I mean, I thought I would have got just a crook of a smile when I said gizzard, but nothing from you. It's so hard to make the man laugh. For me, not for other smarter, funnier people. Let's get into, first of all, let me take this back. You made a healthy choice. That's great. We're going to, do you want us to hold your feet to the fire? The goal is 70-pound loss by the end of the year, whether you run for office, whether you don't. That'll be good for the rest of your 9-foot frame, I guess.
It's important that I establish myself as the tallest member of Congress that isn't built like John Fetterman.
Right. That's a lane that you can occupy really, really well. And I encourage you to. Yeah, he's ruined the credibility of monstrously tall men.
Yeah, the heighted community is he doesn't speak for us.
Well, I'm excited for that. You are still on track. Just a couple quick things. You're on track to maybe run for Congress in the congressional seat that Mikey Sherrill may vacate if she becomes the Democratic nominee for governor, which is they're having a primary, I think, fairly soon. And B.
June 10th.
June 10th. That's coming up. And what is the likelihood? Is there polling? Do you want to give us? I only care about the New Jersey Democratic primary because of how it affects your potential run. Right. So make quick work of it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to. The only person, and I've made this joke to a few people, but I said, the only person I need to run it by right now is my brother. And I define our relationship. If our family was the Godfather, we have no Fredos. It's just two of us. But I'm Sonny. He's Michael, even though he's the older brother. He would be Michael Corleone. I would be Sonny, the more angry, volatile member. He's the cold, calculating guy. And Godfather 2, Connie, the daughter, has to go see her brother to get permission to get remarried. And I feel like that I have to go to him and be like, I want to present this to you. What do you think about it? And how against it are you? And he works for the New York Times. That's kind of irrelevant, but I don't think it's completely irrelevant in terms of his life. And, he probably will not want me to do it. Yeah. But I just he'll be the first person I have to convince to get behind this.
Yeah. That's hard. That's hard to do when the people that care about you most. When I was thinking about running for town council, Eric Siegel said, you can't do it. I said, why? He goes, because you can't lie and you have to lie for that. And I was like, it really, I remember where I was when he told me that. And I don't know that I agree with him. I don't know that I agree with him at all, but he cared so much about me. My brother wasn't encouraging about the idea of it either, but in the end, I didn't obviously run for town.
That's funny because Eric Siegel said to me, you can absolutely do that, JL. So I'm starting to think he doesn't think as highly of my character.
All right. So that's interesting. That's update. Quick update on the podcast. I've seen you say and heard you say on YouTube that your podcast, which I'm a huge fan of, and just your commentary, I've enjoyed that you've built this bridge of posting 5 to 15-minute pieces on YouTube and elsewhere because I enjoy your commentary and the way that you distill cultural, political, all kinds of things. And so what's the deal with the podcast? Is it coming back in June?
In June, 100%. I'm lining up actually some guests, including the author of the book we discussed last week.
Great.
He wrote to me and thanked me personally for the things I had said. I want to talk Bitcoin with Anthony Scaramucci. I want to the podcast, which was always yes. So you asked me to be short. It's coming back in June. We're setting up my new computer, my new camera, so that it looks much better than, this will be the last time, hopefully, you see me in this kind of grainy 720 definition. But we just have to set up everything. And my girlfriend actually, for one of my birthday presents, was she got me a neon umbrella to hang on my wall as part of my backdrop for the show.
Great.
Rain on Your Parade.
I love it. That's very, very thoughtful and supportive of her. And I will reach out to you after privately to offer you any facility I can. I will make your coffee. I'd love to produce in any way for free anything that you need, whether it be guests or promotion or anything. I'm really encouraging you in all ways, always. So there you go. There it is.
The show, I will say, I liked dipping into different things each time. There was always a little bit of a political bend to the topics. Talking about Morgan Wallen for an episode or Yellowstone. Those are not strictly political topics, but I would steer them towards what do I think these say about our politics. The show, when it comes back, because of my, quasi ambitions and thoughts right now, will be a largely political podcast.
Good.
So
great. I'm excited. I hope my only thing with you, my only note or criticism with you is I like to hear your thoughts on several things. And I don't mind that you go long on any one thing. I enjoy that.
What I will tell you is the format will stay the same. There will be a kind of, here's the 10 to 15 minutes intro talking about stuff, not necessarily the main topic. Then there will be a main topic. And then I'll do a little comedy because I'm still a comedian. And I'm not going to stop doing comedy if I run for office, because like any job, you can't just quit your job as you try to get another job.
Great.
And my buddy who enjoys listening to us, I was having drinks with him last night watching the Knicks game, and he's a political junkie. He was kind of grilling me on a lot of things because he's concerned, but also I think a little excited about this possibility of me running. And I think my answers I think he was very satisfied with a lot of my answers on issues that he thinks might be tricky for me.
Interesting.
And I told him, I said, it's very easy when you say what you believe, it's very easy to defend yourself.
Well, unpack it by jumping into it also with an example of one of the thoughtful questions or situations or issues that your friend who knows and cares about you thought might be tricky for you.
Sure. Well, here, an easy one was like, well, they're going to call you the comedian from New York, or they're going to brand you. This isn't a serious person. We don't need an entertainer.
You mean the attacks that are going to be
kind of, or to be prepared, or even just skeptical questions from voters who are like, why should I trust? And I would say, when people nominate or vote for a Navy SEAL or somebody who served in the military, they're not necessarily voting for that person because they think, if the Capitol, bad example, January 6th, but if I don't expect them to go into the Capitol with guns and start shooting in case a fight breaks out. It's the skills they've acquired in the military, leadership, sacrifice, etc. And I said, as a comedian, you're not voting for me I'm not going to be making jokes. But the skills that the Democratic Party is sorely lacking right now, engagement, communication, messaging, these are skills that as a comedian traveling the country, and when you talk about sacrifice, it's not the same as military sacrifice, but it is not easy. I don't want you to think being a stand-up comic for 20 years was some luxury cruise where I just told jokes and reaped millions of dollars. It is skills I've acquired there that the Democratic Party specifically is lacking now that I think I can bring to bear.
And you've crisscrossed this country as a comedian, specifically on the buses and trains, which puts you with different income brackets, all of them. You're around every single level of socioeconomics in your life and your career as a lawyer and as a comedian and growing up.
I've been every socioeconomic class in comedy.
That's a great point. That's in a lot of different ways, for sure.
You turn into, And that's why I brought up the military as an example, because it's like I have a set of skills that are of use in the political climate.
Sure. No, I love it.
And
that's a very easy one for you to parry. Give me one more that might be tricky.
He said Israel, in case there's a constituency that's either very pro or very finds this. I would be voting on issues related to this if I was a member of Congress. And I said to him, I'll give you two. There were two issues because he also asked me athletes in sports. And I said, if you want my honest opinion, I think communities should be able to determine for themselves what they think is appropriate for their schools. But I said, so if a community thinks it's perfectly okay, I'm okay with that. And if a community genuinely doesn't want trans girls playing girls sports, I'm not, in my gut, I'm not saying, oh my God, that's horrible. How dare you? But what I would warn, and I would say Democrats in general aren't articulating this, but this is why Democrats fight on this issue when it comes up. It's a Trojan horse for the Republican Party because it started as don't let the kids get, hormones and genital mutilation when they're children like that. It was about protecting the kids.
Yeah.
The kids. Then it became the high school athletes, or college athletes. It became, and it was like, well, college athletes aren't they're not children. They're sort of adults legally. There's a little more agency, a little more independence there. And then it became trans people can't serve in the military.
Right.
I go, well, that has nothing to do with kids. That has everything to do with shaming and denigrating and vilifying this community. And I said, that is why when you see Democrats being accused of fighting on the trans sports issue, which is an 80-20 issue, you look at that and you say, the reason you got to fight on these issues is because they are not good faith actors. Donald Trump and his minions are not good faith actors. There is a nuanced, honest conversation to be had on trans athletes.
So if you were asked this question straight up at a debate amongst you and your other primary contenders, how do you feel about the issue of trans girls playing girls sports? What would you do on that? Your answer would be kind of what you're saying here, which is that's a Trojan horse question. They've been vilified. Go ahead.
But I'm not, because it's my honest feeling. I played sports. I understand that a parent who is concerned about this is not necessarily some bigot who just doesn't like trans people. They might have a daughter and see someone of clear, bigger strength and athleticism. Oh boy, that could be a problem. I think that's why I would say, and I don't think it's a cop-out to say, I think that could be community-based. I think like a lot of school.
So your answer would be that's a decision that should be left to school districts.
I think so. And I think when I see, but of course, like I said, I have to make that additional point but of course, that doesn't mean that people in school districts can't also do what Donald Trump does, which is use it as a vehicle to discriminate more broadly. But I don't think it's a black or white issue.
What did you say? You never, I don't think you answered the question or how you would answer Israel.
Oh no. Well, now I jumped. Well, what I said to my buddy is I said, obviously October 7th was an atrocity. I was appalled and disgusted when that happened. And of course, I'll say it, even though I don't think it needs to be said, but I guess I will. Israel, of course, has a right to defend itself. Like that's the cliche at this point. But Benjamin Netanyahu, from all I've read, doesn't seem at all like an honest broker to wage this war in an honorable fashion. And when he has people in his own cabinet claiming that he's scuttling a hostage exchange to keep the war going, when his own people before October 7th viewed him as corrupt and he was facing impeachment, Israel has a right to defend itself. But as an American, I have a right to say, I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu is the man to execute this war in a manner that I find acceptable. And I think the body count proves that this is a guy who, and the line I said to my friend was, if people in his own cabinet and his own people viewed him as corrupt and possibly scuttling a peace process to engage in more war, why should I have more faith and give more power to Benjamin Netanyahu than his own people in certain cases?
Well, I like that answer. I like that answer a lot. All right. Well, those would be some of the interesting, tricky issues.
Now for the jokes, folks. That's why you came to this debate. Am I right?
Well, that's the other thing. It's like Al Franken was a United States senator. And
my buddy told me that I should reach out to Al Franken immediately.
You absolutely should. And others should on your behalf as well. Maybe hit him in a few places so he takes.
Oh, don't say that. My fans will start harassing. They'll be like, have you heard of this guy?
Might not be a bad idea.
Well, I have heard of him, and now I'm disgusted by him because of his fans.
Not bad. But when we talk about the seriousness of a politician, it's a very strange conversation at this point in time. Like, there used to be people who were on the fringe, who were conspiracy theorists and who didn't kind of deal with the same truth as the rest of us. But now, always in every state house and Congress there were, but now it's like the whole Republican Party is a silly joke in terms of having any agenda, much less moral integrity. Yes. And we're in this Earth 1, Earth 2 situation that we always describe about what is real and what is not. And I just wanted to jump into a couple of things that are going on I want to get your take on. The President of the United States, today, every day, it's insane. And every day he gives you a reason to hate him or be terrified or wonder how he gets away with this or if people see this, how they think. And today it was, he went on Truth Social and shared a post from another user that asserted that President Biden had been secretly assassinated and that the country was being run for the entirety of Biden's term in office by robotic engineered, soulless, mindless entities. There is no Joe Biden. He was executed in 2020. It read, Biden clones, doubles, and robotic engineered, soulless, mindless entities are what you see. Democrats don't know the difference. Trump shared this. This is crazier than any QAnon conspiracy theory I've ever heard. It's the craziest one I've heard for sure. It's crazy. I would more likely believe that Tom Hanks was mining the blood of terrified children for longevity than I would believe this. But either way, this tops it. And I feel like you need to stop sometimes and be like, he shared this today, the president.
Yeah. The thing about Trump is he always shares, it's like he can pivot. He does things like, oh, it's a joke. The left can't take a joke. Or he'll be like, we have to look into it. We have to look into this very strongly right now. He can pivot one way or the other. And it's, as we discussed during the live hangout a couple of weeks ago, dangerous embarrassment. Like
but all journalists,
both of those things.
The whole industry of journalism should take things like this and look at it only one way. How many people actually will believe this? Because when the president of the United States says anything, markets move. He's sharing this post, this crazy, insane post. And so it should be the only question he gets asked about his sanity, about what this means. And maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's the distraction that he's looking for or something. But I don't know. I'm losing my mind about that one this morning because it feels to me like I should take a minute or two to discuss it with someone. I choose you.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the very premise of a Trump presidency is so beyond what a normal, sane, decent country should do. We are, the minute he got reelected, we entered some sort of bizarre world. I know we want to keep parsing, and then he did this and they did. The man is an awful human being, a criminal, a racist, not bright. And that it was like game on once he was elected. So all these other things start to pile up and I go, well, that's ridiculous, or this is sick, and you start to realize, well, there are tens of millions of people in this country locked into him like he is a faith leader. So it's like, this is going to, a normal country shouldn't be fucking waiting for the 7 million people in the middle to wake up. Donald Trump should have won, I brought this up before. 1984. Ronald Reagan won 49 fucking states in 1984 against a normal former vice president of the United States. And he won 49 states. A Republican cannot lose more than like 25 states, the way our country thinks and the way it's divided. Like Donald Trump, like in other words, there is no candidate who, because the Republican Party is now a religious movement. You know, it's a sort of quasi-Christian nationalist, quasi-bigoted, ignorantly populist kind of collection of people and greedy people with lots of money. And that it is impenetrable at this point. And I have said before that the goal has to be not having tea with Steve Bannon or Charlie Kirk or figuring out what makes Tom Cotton tick. It's getting everybody who didn't vote to vote Democrat and every independent to wake up and realize this party is lost. They aren't good at what you think they do. They're horrible at the things they should do. They're morally bankrupt. They're sycophants. They're empty vessels for this cult of Trump. And it's not a serious option. Like, you know, and I read I said I'd keep my answers brief, but it's everything he does is like fair game as far like him sharing that post is a logical extension of what he is. It doesn't shock me. It's just like the latest installment of, yes, this is what happens when you put an awful, crazy person in charge of tens of millions of ignorant, greedy, selfish, bigoted, any combination of those people who will not abandon him.
Is it a question?
They care more about what feelings he gives them and who he is attacking than anything he actually does.
Is it a question that you think would be worth asking for the few minutes that you get access to a cabinet secretary if you're a Sunday morning corporate news show? A Kirsten Welker or a George Stephanopoulos sits down with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and shares with him the post that Trump, these conspiracy posts, or mentions a few of them and asks them about it. Is that worth it, or is it just a waste of time? It's probably just a distraction. Let's move on.
It's a waste of time.
Okay.
Until Sean Hannity brings it up, you know, or Brett Baer even, it's a waste of time.
Okay.
Because
that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Let the bar be.
He'll say, well, I haven't, you know, Mike Johnson is, my God, do I miss Mike Pence? I never thought I'd say that. But watching Mike Johnson operate is like, you know, he's the type of guy, well, I haven't seen the post yet. That's the answer.
Yeah.
I can't comment on that. I haven't seen it yet. You haven't seen what your boss, the president, has written. And that, by the way, is my favorite thing I get from trolls on the internet. They're like, oh my God, Trump is living rent free in your head. Liberals are so obsessed with Trump. And I go, yeah, he's the president and dangerous. Like if an asteroid was headed towards Earth, it would be living rent free in my head. I don't know that that's not a normal reaction.
Exactly.
To have. Right?
That's
like,
the best.
Yeah, shouldn't it be? Like, you're fucking weird for not being kind of obsessed with a man with the nuclear codes who's incredibly dangerous and incredibly indecent. And I throw the indecent part because I did read Jake Tapper's book. I know many people are mad at me for doing that. But, you know, I can see somebody being like upset with the, you know, the Biden regime in terms of his capacity.
Oh, well, I don't think I don't buy that standard at all because I look at it that I don't care if Joe Biden was
Well, that's why I said decency, like, because I could trust Biden. I felt like I could trust, after reading the book, I was like, I'd still trust Joe Biden and his administration because of the fundamental, what I believe, decency and experience.
Yeah.
His incapacity was one of age, not one of like mental stability and immorality.
Yeah, exactly.
But I still think I'm sorry to go off on that.
Go ahead.
I do think, and I've tried to say this to people, I'm like, you know my politics. You know where I stand on Trump. You know that I was a big Biden guy. But after reading the book, and now I see Jake Tapper in some interviews, and I do see him starting to use some language that makes me go, you know, unlike a Lester Holt or a Chris Wallace, who's part, you know, Lester Holt was a registered Republican, Chris Wallace a registered Democrat. I couldn't have told you what their politics were, which is the way it kind of should be for a news anchor. Jake Tapper's starting to give me little hints where I'm like, oh no, are you one of these guys who's gotten too many insults from the left and you're starting to show your Dartmouthness, in terms of like.
Specifically, he compared the Biden scandal to Watergate. Is that what you're talking about?
I mean even more subtly, like using words like I talked to my friend lawfare. He's starting to kind of throw in words that I kind of only associate with right-wing media.
If he wants to survive, if he wants to make he's setting up his career maybe after CNN, going independent and being, well, okay, enough about him. Let me ask you about Elon Musk. Can I? He's quote out. He gave a really weird interview on CBS. You do a great impression of him. You should watch. You seem to understand his psychology and behavior pretty well, the way you do a lot of the people who you do dead-on impersonations of. My question for you is, it seems that the Trump administration and more people are starting to realize the dude failed at cutting government. He failed badly, and arguably he's going to cost more money than what he cut because of what he actually cut was saving us money. And a lot of people are simply looking and go, no, the guy was never there. He was there ostensibly to do Doge. That was the whole thing he created. But what he was really there to do was to install his people, to make sure that there weren't any obstacles for his private sector, government contracted companies like SpaceX and Tesla, make sure there weren't obstacles in the way of him doing any kind of business he wanted to do. And I think you could argue to fight the woke mind virus. He did have an ideology, and it's been pretty well documented by journalists who have covered him and his tech billionaire bros about this one world tech government, all that. I mean, he wasn't there to cut government. I think that's what people are learning. Is that the deal? Is that your narrative? Do you understand it? How differently do you understand it than how I just tried to explain it?
I think he was there to do both. Honestly, I think he should have never been there. And once again, perfect. Oh, good. Trump can blame anything that goes wrong with this. Trump can blame Elon, or his people can blame Elon. Elon should have never been there on so many levels. But I think Elon went in thinking he was going to cut lots of government because he's just so smart. You know what I mean? He's so smart and so ruthlessly efficient and such a great business mind and leader that he could do it. And he could do two things at once. He could benefit himself and also just make government more lean, because government people are so dumb. They're so dumb, Pete, that I'm a brilliant super genius Tony Stark, and I can go in, and if they just let me do what I do, which Trump did, because Trump, as I've said, is incredibly lazy. I know to his supporters, they say, oh, he never sleeps. I go, that's probably because he has some sort of illness, not because his brain is so hyperactive that he just can't stop doing great things. Trump is lazy. He just just like he wants one big, beautiful bill, because it's easier than doing 20 bills and getting into the nitty gritty. He wanted to hand this off as a PR thing to Elon, let him do everything. If it fails, he can blame Elon. If it succeeds, he gets a win and didn't have to do anything. And Elon Musk, I think, is an egomaniac. I mean, he has some valid things to be proud of and in terms of accomplishments, but he didn't it's ridiculous. He could just say he was doing something like Trump, and people would go, look at that, cutting more money. And I think it may have been Michael Cohen, your frequent guest. He may have tweeted this. It may have been somebody else, but basically, like, if he's not going to touch like the debt, the military, or entitlements, everything that he's claiming to cut is like this minuscule, insignificant thing in the broad. But the key to the Trump base is that, well, I make $70,000 a year. So if Mr. Trump tells me they're cutting $40 million in aid to like poor countries, or they don't look at the budget. No foreign aid. That's an incredible amount of savings.
No perspective on the budget is needed if you just understand the statement that you said, Michael Cohen or whoever else. If you just realized what the budget was, the percentages, if you just looked at one pie chart and you saw what they were taking and then looked at what they were taking from, I mean, it was particularly egregious that in the early days they went after foreign aid and the State Department.
Michelle Goldberg had a very good column in the Times, I think in Saturday's paper. It might have been digitally available earlier, but where she was just like, the one thing he did successfully was decimate foreign aid and aid to the poor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just saw Bono trying to talk about it with Joe Rogan.
And I'm sure Joe Rogan's fans are huge Bono fans.
If you believe what Joe Rogan professes and believes, which is what a lot of people believe, which is that there was a tremendous amount of money being laundered and so much crime and waste and fraud and abuse in USAID budget. I mean,
you have to believe, Pete, I'm sorry. This is something I was yelling at my friend last night on a different issue, but it fits here.
Yeah.
You have to believe that, because otherwise you're just killing poor children. You have to no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
You have to create a narrative where, oh my God, no, I wouldn't do this, but for the amount of violence and laundering and crime that it's leading to. Because if you're wrong, then you're just starving poor kids and leading diseased people to their deaths.
Well,
so you've got to believe that there's some greater narrative. It's like the human trafficking and the child trafficking. You have to couch your disgusting movement in such messianic, holy, unimpeachable terms that, well, yeah, Trump's worth it because we're stopping people from trafficking children. Oh, well, okay. Because if he's not doing anything on trafficking children, you just elected the worst fucking human being in the country to run the country and be the most powerful person in the world. So I guess we have to accept some messianic narrative, because if it's not that, it's the same way we've talked about hardworking immigrants. You've got to believe that immigrants are fucking sitting on couches and assaulting people and not working, because if you realize they're working harder than you, now what do you have? Now, what do you have when you realize they're working harder than you and contributing and doing nitty gritty things in a fucking foreign country? I was in Montreal for a day, and I took French in high school, and I even felt a little intimidated. Like, oh man, I feel like such a stranger in this world where everybody's speaking French. Now they can flip bilingual very quickly. And then I think of the guy who came here from Honduras or Guatemala with his family, or maybe with part of his family, or none of his family, and is traveling the buses, fearful of being deported while he goes to his 2 jobs. That guy's lazy. That guy's not working hard. You want me to believe that he's the problem in America? He's the thing hurting America? Well, if you're going to act the way the Republicans do, you have to concoct ridiculous.
I don't know that I don't
narratives about people.
I think
to justify it.
I don't agree. I think that you leave out, which is maybe I'm not understanding you, the room for the people, as we've seen. Particularly, I mean, this is what I see in my local community Facebook page. People I know live here. Mm-hmm. At the videos of families being torn apart, they don't think what you're saying is necessarily true. They simply believe that those people are here illegally, and the rest of the narrative that my tax dollars are going to them and not homeless veterans, and that I have no sympathy for those people because they're here illegally. Like, not only do I not
Did they make cuts to the VA? I would ask them, did they make cuts to the VA? Or was that Donald Trump?
Yeah, but no, those are all logical arguments. I'm simply saying that there are some people that their humanity around these issues seems to be lacking, is the only way I can see it, because we're all astonished by the people who see these videos of families being torn apart, and all of the comments. I don't think they're bots. I think these are real people who say, fuck those people. Fuck them. They never should have come here. They hate them.
My pastor, Tom Homan, tells me that if you don't want to be separated from your family, stay together in your home country.
These people have been so dehumanized now for generations. So that's my pushback. I mean, I don't feel like you're leaving nuance. You're saying if you're a moral person, you have to believe these nonsense about these entities or these people, or else you would be rooting for poor people to die. But I'm saying no. You're
saying some people are rooting for poor people to die.
I am, because they believe a narrative that they've been told on talk radio and by the current president for years and years. And that's a narrative that goes, you can cite history better than I can in other societies. Dehumanization. These people that you are sitting here and doing a great job distilling their humanity and how hard they work are seen as not human. They're not human. They're like the Palestinians too. It's the only way, I think, that you
that's what I made. I think I had said in a video that I said immigration is Donald Trump's Dred Scott. It's his. They are not fully.
Yeah.
I don't believe I don't think he thinks immigrants are full people.
Neither do a lot of people. He doesn't think. He takes it a lot further. He doesn't think you're a full person unless you make 10 million. The rest of us, you don't even shouldn't be sharing air with him if you haven't earned or inherited a certain amount of money.
Yeah, you're right. Of course, I agree with you that there are some people who are just, but I think
it's my way of asking
you a root of like, you've got to believe things about people to get you to a place where you can just go, yeah, F them. They don't belong here. F them.
It's my way of kind of bringing me to the last thing I definitely know I wanted to ask you about, which is I know a lot of folks listening. I'm always in the chat with the listeners and supporters of our work here, wanting to know how they're feeling, what they're seeing, what they're thinking. And there's obviously, this isn't just here, it's everywhere. People watching these families be torn apart on camera or sometimes in person, woman crying because her son was in school. She's saying, who's going to pick my son up? As these non-uniform wearing, mask covered, they could be anybody. That's a crazy thing. You should have to always wear a uniform if you're arresting someone, unless it's some long-term undercover. Like, this is crazy pants what's happening. But the question to you is kind of more not an analytical one, but like, you're also great for just emotionally trying to understand when we're watching these videos, we're feeling. It's horrible, JL. It's horrible. And there's been so many of them, and there seem to be everywhere. And it seems to be getting worse. And first they came for. I get it. First they came for. But man, we are really watching it. And it's so hard is all I want to say. And I want to get your thoughts on watching what's happening and what it means and what, if anything, action there should be taken.
Well, while watching families get separated, Donald Trump says to Melania, it's so hard. I think it's a turn on for him. I
don't think he gets the opportunity to say that to her, but I get the joke.
Thank you. I thought about going with Tom Homan again.
Well, I mean,
it
suspends.
That would have been more.
You're asking us to send disbelief and say that they're in the same room ever.
Right. He. This will sound very harsh for a lot of Republicans, but there is a. I think I've talked to you about gun violence in the past where I said somehow by letting children die, it is like validation that they put principles first. They believe so much in the Second Amendment that even kids dying won't change them. And that's proof, in an Abraham sort of way, willing to sacrifice your own son to God. Well, in this case, they're willing to sacrifice other people's children to their Second Amendment. And I think when you see them worry about kids in certain contexts, trafficking and trans issues, it's always interesting to me that their concern for children always lines up perfectly with their political agendas. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, we always love our kids, but the only time we get real fired up isn't over gun violence. That is pretty bad for kids as far as I've seen. I've seen the stories. It seems that gun violence, when it happens to children, is really
well. It's
bad.
Also the leading cause of death for adolescents in America, which is
I've heard heart attacks from seeing penises in the girls' bathroom is a rising. It is
second or third, but you would think you'd care about number one.
Exactly. It's so, but I always think it's very interesting how now kind of political agenda and children's safety are kind of parallel interests. There's not one that's clearly ahead of the other. When you see the way, who said, what's the quote? Like, don't tell me what you're going to do. Let me see what you're doing, or something to that effect. But anyway, when you bring, I rambled. I'm sorry. Was this about just seeing kids separated?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, it was, no, you did a good job explaining the principle. If the principle is, in this case, immigration, if the principle is the Second Amendment and enforcing it doesn't matter whose kids get hurt. And you even brought the Bible in, which is always good perspective because it's true. There's a lot of that. I think sometimes those of us who don't study or didn't study religion or don't think about religion we forget is what they are reading and thinking every day. A lot of these folks are radicalized into these militant Christian nationalists that the vast majority of Americans don't understand. what has happened in America's Christian churches, unless you pay attention to certain authors and journalists and segments, you certainly don't live near them. You don't realize how fucking horrifically militant and violent they have become, or that they can condone for their larger agenda of their strange version of white Jesus Christ with an AK-47, or Donald Trump is the second coming, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we are. I mean, that's why I think the answer now is, if this outrages you, as Obama said, don't boo, vote. And you've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice. What's more important, your self-righteous purity or doing more good than harm? And the Republicans
And you think that's what separates, you think that's what hurts the non-Trump, non-MAGA world movement is self-righteous purity?
Yes, I think. And I get it in some cases. It's a sliding scale. Some people can have much greater justification or emotion on issues than others. But the bottom line is your vote can move the needle one way or the other. And Democrats, I think I made this analogy to you before, but Democrats kind of seem to think, especially low information or passive I wouldn't even say Democrats, non-MAGA, non-voters, this kind of idea where Trump is always selling wins and accomplishments, even if he actually has nothing.
Yeah, well, executive orders.
Right, but he sells, look at all that I'm doing, even if he's doing nothing.
Yeah, every day.
And Democrats don't get credit. And I said this to my friend last night. I said, analogizing it to a football game, you want your offense to score points, but sometimes your team is on defense. In fact, for a good amount of the game, your team is on defense. You don't demand a pick six every time. We just stop them. No, the goal is to stop them and to stop their progress from hurting your team. And the Republican agenda is so unbelievably anti-American, like literally anti-people, that it's like stopping that is a win of sorts. To hold the line has to sometimes register with people as a win. And I feel like we're in this country where it's like, no, everything has to be a win. Give me more. What are you doing for me?
Right.
What are we getting?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what we're getting. We're getting 13, instead of saying he's going to take 13 million people off Medicaid, it's like, we're going to keep 13 million people on Medicaid.
You cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You can't play some zero-sum game. I mean, there's all different schools of thought on this around history and politics and different social and civil rights movements, right? In terms of the conversation about patience. I think Lyndon Johnson told Dr. King to be patient and he wasn't. So that we could talk about patience, but I don't even think you're talking about that or even incremental gains. I think you're talking about literally saving the health care of millions, which is why I thought about, Obamacare. Like, that's where I learned the phrase, can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because I covered the entire building of that bill and then the unbuilding of it. And what we got was access to health insurance for millions more Americans and people on the individual markets like me now. So I
think even more than make the good, the perfect, the enemy of the good. It's also, don't make enemies out of the people trying to make good. Democrats are not, I'm sorry. Democrats, you can say they're flawed, they're this or that.
Yeah.
They are the good guys. I'm sorry. In all their flaws, they are the good guys. And I came up with this idea. I was like, is Donald Trump the kind of the cultural apex of decades of us watching anti-heroes in TV shows, like white anti-heroes? That's the key. Tony Soprano, Don Draper, Walter White, all these like bad, flawed white guys that we kind of root for, even though they're the bad guy. And then we get to this point where now we have to the MAGA movement, we have the greatest anti-hero in history.
I don't know. I don't love that, because all of those anti-heroes
died.
They were shown.
No, Don Draper didn't die.
Every one of them that you mentioned,
He's
I
at
think.
Mar-a-Lago right now. He's an old guy.
And you should have said a better analogy would be some sociopath who didn't care about people. Each one of the people you describe, the audience only roots for them because the show or the movie shows their humanity on some number of levels, for their family, for some people. I mean, you root for John Wick because he loved his dog. Like, enough. I mean, like it should be the comparison you're making, I think, should be more Hannibal Lecter or some other sociopath that doesn't have any humanity, and yet people are really still rooting for him. I mean, by the way, what about this question? It's just topical, and so this will go viral. Trump is threatening all of California over one trans girl playing track and field. And it goes to your earlier point.
Gavin Newsom has already drowned her on his podcast to prove that he's electable in 2028.
That seems particularly dark. Why did he have to drown her? He couldn't have just detained her, or he had to kill the person?
He wants to win over some MAGA voters.
So he really had to show a punishing, torturous death.
You got to out Trump if you're going to win MAGA voters.
That's
Trump's
a good
just
point.
Demonizing her.
Oh, it's funny watching people try to out Trump him that we're not. Like John Barrasso of Wyoming, who used to be a soft-spoken Republican senator, is now, or any number of these people, RFK, obviously, they're all like try to do the Trump impression of anger and hostility towards the question being asked. And it's hilarious if it wasn't so dangerous. But getting back to the trans athlete thing, like if all of California loses funding for sports or whatever the threat is, I don't quite understand what funding, it means the most MAGA districts are going to lose funding where there is no trans athlete. It's one in the whole state, but that they will do it. They will support it. Like they will support maybe, or my question is to you, I support shutting down my son's entire season and funding and resources for his sport because of some district in another part of this giant state that is allowing a trans girl to play track. Will they support it? Yes.
Yeah, and that's another distinction.
And they support cutting the funding of clean energy too. Another unbelievable. You're going to have more pollution in your state because of that. It's crazy. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's what I mean. But their whole agenda is: are we attacking the interests of Democrats?
Right.
Regardless of it's a good idea or a bad idea.
If it's bad, but are we attacking the agenda of our enemy, even though that attack ends up hurting us just as much?
Yes, because the Trump movement is not about good for us. It's about bad for them.
Right. Simplified.
That is the agenda. Yep. It really is. Like he is doing such a bad job as president right now, like a historic. I would honestly argue, compared even to his first term, this is so much worse and so much goofier and dangerous and unaccomplished. It's like they clearly don't care, and they're willing to put faith in him. Like when they say, well, I lost my job, or like times are tough now. But, unlike Joe Biden, who didn't care about me, Trump cares about me, so I know it's going to end up good in the end. It's worth some sacrifice. Like these are people who will not sacrifice for climate change, the long-term existential threat that faces our planet. They will not cede a minute of sacrifice or a dollar towards that end, but they're willing to be like, I lost my job and my health insurance, but Trump's got me.
Yeah, it's always a good reminder to have to explain that way and by you. All right. Well, that's all I wanted to do today, I think.
Great. Thank you.
Anything on RFK? Anything on Kristi Noem?
Well, as I posted on social media, she gives off the vibe of a woman who simply took the job so that she could promote her OnlyFans. I don't like, I see so many, like, because I have a lot of Trump stuff on my Facebook page, like about my videos and stuff, I see a mix of like left-wing pages and right-wing pages. And, whenever I see a post that says Carolyn Levitt got called KKK Barbie by LeBron James, and then she calmly dissected him to his face and owned him. And it's got like 20,000 likes and just comments going, I love her, way to stick it to LeBron. And I just want to be like, if you like this post, you're racist, right? Like there's nothing to that. It's the most fake bullshit post, but you're just like, yes, our blonde idiot told that black billionaire what's really going on.
Wait,
good.
I didn't even know. I'm just looking it up. LeBron James called Caroline Leavitt. This is just a few days ago. I didn't know this. He called her KKK Barbie on social media, and she answered on social media?
No. It's a fake fucking story. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, you didn't tell me it was a fake story.
No, I did. Like, it's a totally bullshit like, you can tell, because I'll see these things. Carolyn Leavitt was on Colbert's show last night, and he thought he got her. Turns out she turned the tables on him. I'm like, are you sure Carolyn Leavitt was on Colbert last night as a guest?
I felt it's important. We should probably talk about these. I mean, I fall for some of these fake stories for a minute or two, but I'm usually able to fact check them. But I did see a couple of fake stories that were really well done, I guess, about different celebrities testifying in P. Diddy's. I saw something that said Leonardo DiCaprio testified in P. Diddy's case, and I was like, he did? And I read the transcript like online before and it was like, oh my God, I lost about 5 minutes of my life. Of course, that didn't happen, but there's a lot of these being posted in different ways in different spaces now, and we're all falling victim to some of them. But your point wasn't necessarily about recognizing fake stories, although I took it that way. It was more about just recognizing horrible racism when you see it.
Well, it's about, like, I've said this before, where people say, Trump lied to, like, when they tried to, like, when everybody wanted to, like, let people off the hook and just blame Trump after January 6th. It's like, Trump lied to his people and said that he won, and they believed that he was. That's why they were so excited. And I go, and they're also horrible people. Like, it's like hypnosis. I'm sorry. If you're fucking down to go in the Capitol or protest a fair election because Donald Trump told you, you're in a different space than me. Like, you're in a different world that, like, I don't think the just average person can go, well, let's hear them out. Let's hear what the worst person ever has done. And, it's like hypnosis. You got to be susceptible. Like, there's got to be something in you, a character flaw that goes, no, I trust Trump. Do you? Then I don't trust you. I think there's something wrong with you,
but that's
morally.
always weird. It's always weird to me too, because just as a New Yorker and, The Apprentice and everything, like, I always thought it was weird that anybody trusted him, period.
Right.
But like 1,000 years ago, ever.
Sure.
And like no one, people that knew him or even around him in his dumb military academy didn't trust him.
No, he found. They are on a relative basis. I believe the 2024 MAGA voter is the worst generation of Americans. I want to get Tom Brokaw to write a book called The Worst Generation.
So joining me now,
J.L. Cohen has written a book.
Did I ever tell you that when I was warming up the audience at the Colbert Report and he was the guest, and it was like in the first year or two, and I was a little bit green, to say the least, still about that part of the job. He was the guest, and I said, "Oh, I love Tom Brokaw. Very excited." I started doing a Brokaw impression, and I said to the audience, "To do Brokaw, you just slur your words, like sound a little bit drunk." And it was the first note I ever got at Colbert when the producer was like, Mrs. Brokaw was in the audience and didn't like that.
Wow.
And then I met Tom Brokaw and interviewed him. And then when we were off air, he called, and off the record, but I don't care anymore, he called Nancy Sinatra, or Frank's, I think, wife, a C. In that same voice.
Nancy Sinatra's real cunt.
That's right. That's exactly, yeah. Any thoughts on our personal data being given to Palantir? Somebody mentioned that in the chat because we're live on YouTube.
Oh, hi, everybody.
And I don't know.
Sorry for the C word.
I saw that story, Michelle, and I haven't read it. I shared it with a couple smart people to say, help me understand this. I don't know if you saw it.
Unfortunately, I saw the update. I was on the road, and it's the one time I'm not as reading as much. But yes, I know they've given our data to this company. I'm okay with it. I trust the U.S. government, especially in the hands of Donald J. Trump.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes
do the right thing.
That definitely makes me feel better.
No, we're done as a country. The only, like, if this were any other century or decade, really, we'd be in much deeper trouble. But I think the whole world is going to melt into a content consuming, drool on the side of our cheek, eating chips off of our bellies, sort of literal and metaphorical state.
Weird that you described my yesterday. So it's already come for me. The Trump administration is working with...
You don't have a belly. You have a stomach. I have a belly.
The Trump administration is working with private companies like Palantir to create detailed reports on every American, which could help them weaponize their personal information in their quest to deport immigrants and punish critics. This is the New York Times piece. This is a huge threat to our constitutional rights, says the ACLU.
What constitutional rights?
Fair enough. It's a good point.
It's, the January 6th people didn't get enough due process. That's what I've learned from Facebook.
He's giving pardons to some pretty awful people who don't deserve them, but apparently just paid them off or something.
I think he's going to he pardoned that guy from Chicago. I think he's setting up a Derek Chauvin pardon.
Do you really think
Derek Chauvin will remain in jail? But I think he's going to pardon Derek Chauvin.
But he would remain in jail because of state charges?
Yeah, but on federal charges. It would be the symbolism of saying, we know the woke state of Minnesota threw you in jail, but we don't stand by that in MAGA.
I've heard that, and I've seen the movement.
Another cultural bullhorn to his people.
Oh God, I think there would be a lot of burning cities, but he wouldn't be let out of jail. You're saying?
Because he's still in there on state charges.
He can't be pardoned on. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
But even more, that's what's even almost more disturbing about it. It's more like, I just want you to know that I think you didn't do anything wrong, right. Derek Chauvin.
Right. No,
you didn't do anything about your silly state, but you got a friend in the White House.
Right. Oh God, that's what you think he's setting up for?
Maybe there's some heavy conservative people, in the media space advocating for.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
As if like the conviction of the federal charges against Derek Chauvin are America's real original sin. But seriously, like that's where wokeness really started to destroy our country, when we decided that kneeling on an unarmed man's neck for 9 minutes, killing him was, that was the Adam and Eve of wokeness.
It's crazy because I often think about, and I'm sure plenty of smart people make this comparison, but apparently a lot of Americans woke up in 1960 when the beating on the Selma Bridge of nonviolent protesters, right? 65. So people saw that, and it woke up a lot of Americans to the violence being done against a nonviolent movement for civil rights. I think I'm and the reaction to that though lasted a little longer. I mean, obviously there were achievements. The achievements of that time and that era and those horrible.
It took the Roberts court to undo them.
Exactly.
But we had them for a while.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Thank you, John Roberts.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then.
And I'd like to offer a new book recommendation since I was traveling. I'm mowing down these books.
Yeah.
My brother got it for me for my birthday. It's called Murder the Truth. It's a new book called Murder the Truth by a New York Times writer. And it's about the attempts by the right over the last 40 plus years to undo New York Times versus Sullivan, the landmark press freedom case and the standard that it set of actual malice to be able to successfully sue, or gross negligence to sue a media outlet for publishing.
Sullivan is one of the most consequential free speech decisions ever, fundamental to the creation of the modern media as we know it. It's enabled journalists and writers all over the country, from top national publications to revered local newspapers to independent bloggers, to pursue the truth aggressively and hold the wealthy, powerful, and corrupt to account. The book is Murder the Truth, Fear, the First Amendment, and the Secret Campaign to Protect the Powerful. David Enrich is the author.
Yes. And excellent. It's really I'm not speaking with quite the passion that I spoke of for There Is No Place for Us last time I was on, but that's because this is a book that's a little more academic, but not much. It's still got great narrative stories, but it's to me, it's a perfect example. There Is No Place for Us is this is what's going on